Yeah, g'day, Heather's in... No, wait a minute. Heather's here. Hey, can you do the intro?
Yeah, good day, other Heathers and gentlemen. Welcome to Mark's Old Lathe channel.
Thanks, Heather. Now, I've been working on modernising this beautiful Schaublin 125 CNC lathe from the early 80s. I've been asked by a few supporters of the channel who don't like the Patreon system if I'd implement YouTube memberships, which I've now done. And you know, thinking about it, if you're up to watching 5 or more of my videos, you probably like them.
Thanks for watching, I appreciate that.
But if you've watched 40 Schaublin videos, and maybe 40 mini lathe videos, you're probably a fan. And the step from fan to supporter is only a short one. My next supporters live stream's coming up this week. I think I'll do something on woodworking versus metalworking precision. So if you're interested, all the links are down below. My daughter asked me to make her a table. Unfortunately, here in the city, you can really only get low quality construction pine with lots of knots and stuff. So I got on the classified, found a very nice gentleman up near the Czech border who's selling this nice cherry. So I bought a bunch of it. Need to chop out the nice bits and see if I got enough there to make a table. I think cherry's very nice timber. Here's a little offcut, which I've just run the plane over a couple of times and just threw a bit of shellac on it just to bring out the grain. I think it looks really nice. Hey, do you guys use a track saw with one of these aluminium guide tracks? I know some people just plonk them down on the wood and use friction, but I always had the feeling that they just slip around, especially on wood that's not flat like this. So I tend to put a clamp on the end of it just to stop it sliding, but it needs to be right off on this edge because otherwise the saw's going to hit it. Now Schaublin does make some clamps that slide into this rail, but they look really cheap and nasty and horrible. But it turns out that the Makita clamp fit the same T-profile. Oh darn, when I was in the shop I thought these would fit, but I only offered it up through the plastic bag, and since it seemed to work fine, I'm like, hey cool, that'll work. But it turns out this piece is tapered. So it fits nicely here, but it's too thick down the back. The ones designed for my rail didn't seem anywhere near as strong. So, hey, let's modify them. Do you guys also buy something and then modify it immediately? Kind of reminds me of a time I was home at my parents' place and my dad cranked up the barbie. It was kind of a small barbecue, kind of like a small Weber, maybe even smaller than that. But it had this big, thick steel plate on it. I think it was a plowshare. And a pretty big gas ring underneath it as well.
I'll get back to the story later.
So it needs to be down below 6mm. 5.8 is a good number. Mail time. It's a nice 40 taper Weldon tool holder. This was sent to me from Andy Pugh. Check out his channel up on the top right there. He's one of the best support guys on the Linux CNC forum, and he's done an amazing thing with his Holbrook lathes. So thanks a lot, Andy. I mentioned last week that I wasn't really that sure what was the best way of adjusting the gibs on this, seeing as the ball screw has to be attached when you first mount the cross slide, so therefore you can't move it backwards and forwards and feel the tightness of the gibs. Well, I got 2 different suggestions on how to address that. One of them from Gorak 9000 pointed to a method from Blaise Barrett, which was a method used by Fatal. Unfortunately, you really need to know the exact geometry of the gibs, their taper angle, the thread of the screws, etc. to be able to use that method. So I think in this case I'm better off with the method suggested by Tiago Lomar. Yeah, so once again the whole cross slide needs to come off. Protect the bed. Well, that tightens up a little bit at the end, but not too badly. It's pretty consistent over the entire range of movement. That might be just a little bit too tight because there'll be a bit of backlash in the screw, and I want to get a consistent reading of the depth of the screw head below the surface. I'll just back off too far, and then come back up to the value I'm looking for. As long as I always tighten, I shouldn't have to worry about the backlash in the screw. Well, I've played around with it, and over the range of about a half a turn of rotation, the gib gets consistently tighter but doesn't bind. So here it's definitely too tight. I really got to push against it with all my weight. I'll back off quarter turn. That's still very tight. Go back another quarter turn. Okay, to get my depth mic into that hole, I'm going to have to remove this, which is the cover over the end stops. Oh, wait a minute. This moves a lot easier without that cover on. You can see down this end of that end stop cover that it's had a collision. It's taken quite a dent. There's a raised portion here which seems to be rubbing. We can see where it puts pressure on the cross slide. So let's just knock that out. Okay, that feels much better. Means I can probably run the gib tighter. Okay, it looks like my target dimension is about 4.1 millimeters. Right, knowing that, I can reassemble it all. Okay, that's too far. I need to go out about 2/10 of a millimeter. So do a quarter turn. Okay, just a little bit more. Well, thanks for suggesting that method. I managed to adjust it almost spot on to how it was before. This middle hole's the ball nut oiling screw hole. That's why its screw's got an O-ring on it. It's chipotle time. After I drowned the seeds from last year's jalapenos, I bought a couple of plants and they've come along really nicely. It's been a pretty warm spring here, so the fruit started ripening much earlier than normal, so let's go and smoke some. For this you really want sawdust. These chips are probably a bit too big, that's why they keep going out. Just have to keep relighting it. Next up, I need to get this old motor cable out. Now it runs through this conduit and I wasn't able to just pull it through, so let's open up the unions and take it through one part at a time. I need to be a bit careful here because there's also two pneumatic lines which go to the tool changer. I don't want to break them or damage them in any way. I attached a piece of cord to it, so I've got something to pull the next piece through. Since the cable I removed has this nice thick vinyl condom over it, I guess conduit, I think I'll reuse that. So to do that I need to pull this cable through it. As you can see, it's quite a long cable, I think 3 meters. Although this should be at one end of the conduit, but this should be at the other end. Let's try that again. Although, after spending 2 days getting both of these cables into this plastic sleeve, yeah, it can't possibly go in, because there's one connector on this end, and an even bigger connector on the other end. So basically I have to just feed one from one end and one from the other, but therefore no plastic sleeve. What a waste of time that was.
A real case of denial and error.
Well, Mrs. Rotary turned my chipotles straight into Adobo sauce, or a bodo, or whatever it's called. So we marinated some chicken in it for the barbie. Yum. You know, I really shouldn't even be dicking around with this stuff. I'm supposed to be doing the wiring on the Schaublin, but it's easy to procrastinate on wiring.
Anyway, I was telling you about Dad's Barbie.
So this little barbecue looks like a super cheap and nasty version of the Weber. All aluminium, except for the plastic bits which hold up the legs. We start doing our barbecue, and after about 10 minutes, legs collapse, sausages on the lawn. And I remember my mum saying, "Oh, this is terrible, this is a brand new barbecue." And my sister's like, "Oh, you should take it back, this is defective, get a refund." And my dad was kind of sheepish when he said, "Yeah, but I modified it." Turns out the thing originally had this tiny little wee gas burner about the size of your finger, and he'd put some big, meaty ring gas burner in it. And instead of the little aluminium plate, he'd put a big ploughshare on top of it, and the whole thing got hot enough to melt the plastic leg attachments, and the thing collapsed. So, yeah. Sometimes it's best not to modify new things. But in this case, these are about as good a clamps as I could find. I'm just going to grind away a bit of that step. This is where cut-off wheels work quite nicely on the Clarkson for this sort of thing. One down, one to go. Okay, that slides in nicely. Cool. Well, ripping those boards with a circular saw really wasn't working that well, so I switched to the bandsaw, and it was so fast and so easy, I was done before I even remembered to turn on a camera. Made a bit of a mess though. Before I vacuum this up, I'll just get the best of this nice fine sawdust, because I'll probably need some of this as filler material to fill in any cracks or anything. But I ended up with 6 really nice boards. I only need 5 for the tabletop. And in addition, there's a bunch of oddly shaped, oddly sized boards. I'll make something with them in the future. And all the offcuts, well, I'll burn them. They can be heating in winter. Well, there we have it. My kind of minimal progress for the last couple of weeks. Thanks a lot for watching. And if you're interested, remember, we've got a live stream on Tuesday. Hopefully see you there. Bye.